Good evening. This is the Daily Drum for Wednesday, September 6th. Here's what's happening. A manhunt is underway in D.C. for a murder suspect who escaped custody while being treated at George Washington University Hospital. 31-year-old Christopher Hayes remains at large at this hour and is considered dangerous. A shelter-in-place order has been issued for the university. 3 people are now in custody for yesterday afternoon's quintuple shooting inside the Vallow Apartments in the 200 block of M Street Southwest. 1 man was killed, 4 others were wounded. A 6th man broke his leg when he jumped from a window to escape the shooting. The first televised hearing in former President Trump's election interference case in Georgia wrapped up today. One of Trump's co-defendants, lawyer Kenneth Chesebro, was denied a motion to sever his case. The judge said he will decide later whether to sever the case of the other defendant, lawyer Sidney Powell. Chesebro and Powell pleaded not guilty to racketeering. They are just 2 of Trump's 18 co-defendants in the case. Prosecutors revealed today a joint trial for all 19 defendants would take about 4 months. Federal prosecutors in Delaware plan to indict Hunter Biden this month on gun charges. The president's son had agreed to a plea deal that would have spared him jail time for allegedly buying a gun as a drug user. Hunter Biden would have entered a diversion program, but the deal fell apart in court in July. Ahead of the season opener for the Washington Commanders against the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser is talking again about bringing the team back to D.C.
Our football team should be in Washington. After all, they're called the Washington Commanders. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing to promote professional sports, but also our investments in our local sports.
Tonight, she's attending an event with team owner Josh Harris. Here's a look at the weather tonight. Continued warm after sunset. It will be in the low 80s before finally settling into the mid-70s. Tomorrow, another scorcher. Partly sunny in the mid and upper 90s. Late-day showers or storms are possible. Coming up, we're at the Reporters' Roundtable with a look at the top stories of the week. Lines are open. Give us a call at 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Insight is next on WHUR and WHUT-TV.
On the go and on demand, WHUR and WHUT are with you. Download the WHUR app today to get full access to shows, playlists, and our latest contests. To access WHUT on demand, download the PBS app and make Howard University Television your station. Catch up on our WHUT original productions anytime, anyplace on YouTube at WHUT TV. WHUR and WHUT, better together.
D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, you might have noticed something a little different on Monday nights at 8 p.m. I'm Angie Ange, our Director of Content here at WHUT. And Monday nights at 8 p.m., we like to call it Must See DMV. All your favorite shows from all your favorite creators focus solely on what makes D.C., Maryland, and Virginia so special. So set your clock, and we'll catch you at 8 p.m. right here on WHUT, Howard University Television, telling your stories on your station.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and WHUT-TV. I'm Harold Fisher. We're at the Reporters' Roundtable talking about some of the top stories of the week. This is what we are looking at tonight. A Prince George's County police officer suspended after a viral video showed him involved in questionable activity while on duty. The deadly gun violence in D.C. continues unceasingly. The giant food store in Ward 8 continues to fight a wave of shoplifting. Bosses want remote workers to return to the office. Good luck with that. And Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes beat Texas Christian University. We're going to talk about that too. And by the way, Would you swim in the Anacostia River? Well, your chance is coming up. My guests are Micha Green, managing editor for the Washington Informer newspaper, and Keith Alexander, Pulitzer Prize-winning and D.C. Crime and Courts reporter for the Washington Post. Lines are open. Give us a call at 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Of course, you can X me at H. Fisher, WHUR, or find me on Instagram at Harold T. Fisher. Micha, Keith, thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Thank you for having us again.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let us first start with Acting Sergeant Francesco Marlette. Now, this information just coming in, Prince George's County Police are now having an active internal affairs division investigation. That being announced just a few minutes ago. This initially started out as perhaps thoughts about a police officer doing something that was, I don't know, spending time with a woman in the backseat of his cruiser, and that has happened. But now there are other things that have come up on social media. A woman claiming to be his wife says that that woman is actually his mistress. A woman on social media claiming to be the mistress is accusing the wife of infidelity. Marlette has been suspended, not the first time. So many issues, Micha, right now. It's just so much going on.
I mean, it is a mess, and there's a part of me that has my popcorn out just watching the whole thing unfold. But as someone who really has been following how the police department, local police departments, I should say, deal with the community, interact with the community for quite some time, this is not a good look by any means. I mean, certainly we know that there's a lot of mistrust when it comes to local police departments, but then you add on that he clearly was doing something he didn't have any business doing. And, you know, I've seen a lot of the comments where folks are saying, well, he was minding his business, but not while on duty.
Exactly.
Not in the police cruiser. In the same way that I wouldn't want to see a religious leader, no matter if it's not my religious leader, in collar or in their garb going in the back, or any political leader for that matter, while they're supposed to be on serving in some professional duty, doing something that is definitely reserved, at least culturally speaking, for private quarters.
Well, I mean, and the reality
and not
is,
in front of. And not in front of children. That was
Yes.
a park.
Yeah.
Oxon Hill Park in the middle of the day, you see children in the background. So that's also what really raises concern. And you know, yes, in the uniform, they're hugging, they're embracing, and then they go into the back seat. And later, according to the person who took the video, you saw the car moving, rocking back and forth.
Right.
So
As a matter of fact,
that,
Keith, we have that from the person who took the video, Nelson Ochoa. This is what he had to say yesterday.
We couldn't believe what we were seeing, and then what really made us go like, wow, like this is crazy is when, like I said, when the car started rocking a little bit to the left and right, that's when we were like, wow, this is crazy. And broad daylight with kids around. He was in the car for about 35 to 40 minutes.
Keith, should he be worried about backlash from the police?
I was concerned about his name being out there because on the surface, one would think, no, he did the right thing. But if he lives in Prince George's County and his family, I'm concerned about what that could possibly mean. He is a witness to something, and I was concerned. I'm like, why are we putting the witnesses' names out there? Even if he says, I don't care, I'm okay with that. I was concerned about, I'll be honest, about the media, including the Washington Post and other media outlets, putting this man's name out there. I was.
202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. We are at the Reporters Roundtable talking about some of the top stories of the week, not just this one. Have plenty to get to. If you have a comment or a question, give us a call. Lines are open at 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. I think...
Harold, can I interject one?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Before
Sure.
before you say something. People seem to forget that, and I've learned this covering crime and covering police officers for the past 10, 15 years. Police officers are people, and people seem to forget that, right? These are individuals, men and women, who put on a uniform. Underneath that uniform, they are who they are, and that's good, bad, or indifferent. They are still people, and they bring their person to their job every day. So whoever they are outside the uniform is who they want to be with the uniform. And I just want to make sure people know that.
Okay. So I get that. But I think the other side of that is whether you are a public servant, Micha, or just a working Joe or Jane, if the video is accurate, you are not on the job getting it in. You could lose your job.
Absolutely. It does not matter what you're doing. That is not something that you should be doing while working. Like you said, you can be a crossing guard. If you have that crossing guard uniform on and you should be in the middle of the street doing your duty, protecting children, there's a problem. Yes, it was Labor Day. And, obviously his partner had a moment to go on and do her own thing, or maybe not. But this officer was working. He had his police cruiser. He was in uniform. And to Keith's point, he was in front of children.
Yeah.
There's nothing about what he was busy doing that looked to me like protecting and serving. I have not seen the video of the car rocking, but the little bit I saw of him hugged up on the young lady, even, again, to my point, because he was in uniform, that even is overstepping bounds. I taught for a number of years, and I would look at my colleagues who even some worked with their spouses, but you wouldn't know that if they were walking in the hallway.
That's a really interesting point. Yeah.
And so I think that this officer who has taken vows to protect and serve was serving up a little too much on Labor Day.
That's one way to put it. And here's the other thing.
To elaborate my point, I guess what I was saying was that if a person has morals and ethics, outside the uniform, they're going to have moral and ethics in the uniform. Mm-hmm. If they're racist outside the uniform, they're going to be racist in the uniform. That's my point, is that it doesn't matter to a lot of people who put on this uniform.
Yeah.
They are who they are.
Yeah, and knowing everything that is recorded, but aside from this particular case, I think this also raises questions because now he's suspended again. He was suspended in May for domestic violence concerns by the department way back in 2016. Of course, we know that he had been accused, indeed indicted for child abuse. Those charges were dropped. But, Keith, I got to ask you, is it overstepping to ask why this officer is still on the force? And what, I guess it's going to be, we've got to figure out what are going to be the next steps per this investigation.
Yeah, I've done stories on police officers who have killed individuals multiple times, unarmed individuals multiple times, and they're still in the force.
Yeah.
So police unions are very strong. The case that you mentioned, the charges were dismissed, so he doesn't have a record. And so it would be very surprising if this would even be enough to have him removed off the force.
Yeah.
Because, again, I've seen police officers who've cost taxpayers hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars. and wrongful suits and are still in the force.
Let me go to the phone lines here. 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. We're at the Reporters Roundtable. Lisa, calling from Maryland. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Yes, hi, I'm Harold and Piano. I've been disgusted with this all day. It's unacceptable. It really puts, especially a woman of color, this should not be taken lightly by these officials. Brave Boy quoted her comments. I'm going to be contacting their offices and all that and got things written up. But it shouldn't be taken lightly.
Whoops.
It puts us in danger.
Yeah.
I've heard stories in the past where, women have been violated by police officers, like at nighttime, pulling them over and actually sexually violating them. So this is not acceptable, and I'm going to raise my voice as a woman of color.
Lisa, thank you so much. 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Byron, calling from Maryland. Thanks for calling, Byron. What's on your mind?
Yes, I've been a law enforcement officer for 34 years.
Okay.
And he will lose his job. That's a government vehicle, county vehicle. And the lady can turn around and say, well, he said we're going to go back in the back seat and just talk. I didn't know he was going to do this. And she could call rape on him. He will lose his job before Monday.
You think so?
I know so. And the person that did the video, he is not no way in harm way, because there's no county officers going to back him up on this dumb mess.
Okay.
And they're not going to lose their retirement, their credentials over him.
We will continue to watch it, Byron. Thank you so much for your phone call. 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. We are at the Reporters Roundtable talking about some of the top stories of the week. You can comment on any of the topics, even as we move on to our next one. So don't be afraid to give us a call and take us back. I do want to talk about, again, D.C. deadly violence, handgun violence. 5 people shot yesterday in Southwest D.C. Yes, their arrests were made. There is this new pilot program to target juvenile violence. The curfew, it started on the 1st of September. The mayor and her administration, Micha, throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at this violence issue in D.C., and it continues. Period. It continues. What is next? Is the mayor at her wit's end? I mean, you're not speaking for the mayor, but certainly I would be.
Certainly. If I were the mayor, I would be ready to pull out whatever cute hairstyle she's rocking these days. I know that it has to be incredibly taxing for any leader to see their city suffer. But this violence in particular is affecting our young residents. And so everything that's being done to combat this violence, it's happening and not working, to your point. And so all we can do is look at this curfew. It started, I think it was implemented as of Friday, September 1st, and 4 people were shot. And then we had this mass shooting just yesterday.
Not involving that area juvenile. We'll go on.
Yeah, and understand, Keith. I mean, I'm not saying this is just a juvenile problem. This is that is just one of the elements,
right, that
the mayor has tried to employ to address the violence in the city. So yes, I agree with you. But okay, so Keith, what is next?
Right.
I mean, if I do that, I would be working at the Washington Post, right? It is interesting about this whole juvenile. I just covered the case involving that 16-year-old girl who was fatally stabbed 2 weekends ago by another 16-year-old girl. at 2:00 in the morning.
At the McDonald's.
At McDonald's.
Over sauce
McDonald's,
packets. Yeah.
Right, over sweet and sauce, right. Arguing that escalated. Both these girls were outside their home at 2:00 in the morning. And what's surprising to me is when during the court case and hearing that the parents, if the girl was released back home, the girl who was charged in the murder, she was released back home, the parents would make sure that she wasn't out past curfew and all that nature. I've heard people say this, and I wonder if this is true. I wonder if at some point parents should be held accountable in the court system or financially if their kid is either charged with a violent crime or picks up a second case. The kids, for what I'm seeing, they brush it off. A lot of these cases, they say, okay, well, it's just a notch on my belt. It's bragging rights. And I'm wondering if holding the kids is enough. And maybe we should be also thinking about holding the parents accountable, because that has not been done.
Mm-hmm. What about the National Guard? There's been some discussion about that, Micha, over...
In Ward 8.
In Ward 8 during National Night Out, and activists that I interviewed brought it up. It's been, brought up again and again. Is that far-fetched?
I think that the pushback, at least, that you're getting that we're getting at this point, is that it's such a local issue. And so a lot of the activists that I talk to, particularly those who have sociology backgrounds, fight against the fact that you're bringing in the National Guard for a very localized issue. That said, that's what they're here to do. That is why we have them. But
we don't have statehood, and so the mayor has no control over the D.C. National Guard. That's another show.
That's a whole nother show.
That's a whole nother show.
And we could preach about it for sure. But I think at this point, I still am, to Keith's point, leaning on the community to solve this problem. Leaning on, where are the parents? I was wondering, Keith, and maybe you have an answer to this per the coverage that you're doing, but what if parents don't pick up their child?
That's a really good question.
What happens then?
Right, and we have and we've seen stories where some of these children have been left in these rooms for hours because they can't even find the parents. The custodians can't even find the parents, and that's why I'm saying it seems like it should go back to holding these parents accountable. I'm wondering, I would be surprised if the National Guard is called in, because what message does that send to Capitol Hill, especially now?
Right.
Capitol Hill has been all in Washington political affairs, and to bring in the National Guard, I just think it's going to just really tell Capitol Hill and the whole Republican Party, see, we told you that we need to take control of Washington, D.C. I just think that the mayor and other officials will try to find other ways just to avoid that happening.
Yeah. My friend Sharon just sent me a text. What is missing is parental accountability. You're right, according to her, Keith. What about parents? Absolutely a community issue. Where is the village? 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. James calling from Maryland. What's on your mind? I know you want to talk about the police officer quickly. Go right ahead. James, are you there? Give us a call back if you can. Let me go to Lewis calling from Prince George's. Lewis, what's on your mind?
Sir. How you doing, Harold and Gas?
I'm doing right. I'm doing just fine. Go right ahead.
Yeah, Lewis Meadows calling from Pretty Garrett County. Listen, that cop should be fired. He should be stripped from being a police officer. At best, maybe a security guard just to secure his livelihood. But if that was my child, I would probably lose my freedom. It's important to let people know the most important thing we're doing right now, as they did in Alabama, is filming. And to reduce this crime epidemic, y'all should pay Minister Farrakhan. I mean, ask Jan Reno how much crime went down. Well, you can't ask her, but find out how much crime went down after the million marches. The million men, the million women, the million children, the Promise Keepers. All those marches produced really good results.
Yeah.
It made people much more accountable to their community and family.
Okay.
And we don't have anything like that. We got people saying, make America great and good and grab them by this and all that old nonsense. And now look at it. We're in court.
Lewis, thank you so much. I appreciate your point. I need to take a break, but don't forget you can hear every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. And don't forget you can download the 96.3 HD2 app on your smartphone and hear the program live in its entirety. If you're on the phone, stay with us. The Daily Drum will continue on Sirius XM channel 141 and 96.3 HD2, as well as WHUT TV. I'm Harold Fisher. John Mons is next with the original Quiet Storm. That's on WHUR. We'll be back in a few seconds.
On the go and on demand, WHUR and WHUT are with you. Download the WHUR app today to get full access to shows, playlists, and our latest contest. To access WHUT on demand, download the PBS app and make Howard University Television your station. Catch up on our WHUT original productions anytime, anyplace on YouTube at WHUT TV. WHUR and WHUT, better together.
DC, Maryland, and Virginia, you might have noticed something a little different on Monday nights at 8 p.m. I'm Angie Ange, our Director of Content here at WHUT. And Monday nights at 8 p.m., we like to call it Must See DMV. All your favorite shows from all your favorite creators focus solely on what makes DC, Maryland, and Virginia so special. So set your clock and we'll catch you at 8 p.m. right here on WHUT, Howard University Television, telling your stories on your station.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM and WHUT TV. I'm Harold Fisher. We're at the Reporter's Roundtable. We're talking about some of the top stories of the week. My guests are Micha Green, managing editor for the Washington Informer newspaper, and Keith Alexander, Pulitzer Prize-winning DC crime and courts reporter for the Washington Post. Let's go back to what we were talking about before the break. I want to ask you about this, Keith. What are you hearing about getting control of guns? I think the big refrain that we heard all the way back to when Kathy Lanier was chief of police is that we've got to get guns off the street. Peter Newsham said it. We got to get guns off the street. Chief Conte has said we got to get guns off the street. Okay, so what's the word about addressing that issue? And by the way, how are the young people affording these weapons, Keith, in the black market?
Well, let's start with that question first. I mean, these young people are being given guns by adults
Okay.
to carry out crimes, because the adults want the crimes committed, and they realize that a juvenile will not face the same amount of time as they will be faced. So they get a juvenile to commit these crimes, and they arm the juveniles with these weapons. That's first off. Secondly, a lot of these carjackings and things and situations that are occurring in these thefts, that's how they're getting money by these guns. And they're advertising on social media, changing the word, obviously not using the word guns, but they're using pseudonyms and things of that nature, and they are literally buying and selling firearms on social media.
Yeah.
So in my mind, watching some of the in court cases. Now, DC police have recently offered buyback programs where they're allowing people to, if you know of your neighbor having a gun, you can go to the police and say, look, my neighbor has a gun, and I think it's an illegal gun. You might want to check it out. And you're giving a reward for that, not just a buyback, but just turning in people who they see having a gun. DC police are trying to do everything they can. What's also interesting, recently I did a story, a lot of the guns that are coming into D.C. in the past were coming from Virginia. Not anymore. Now they're coming from as far as Florida, up Route 95, Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. Not so much Virginia anymore, but even further south. They're coming and they're making their way into the DMV. That's what the FBI most recently noticed.
Micha, your thoughts about this?
Well, it terrifies me again because these ghost guns in particular are they're everywhere, they're rampant, and there's no way, for obvious reasons, to really track exactly where they're coming from.
They're untraceable.
They're untraceable. I'm learning a lot, though, listening to Keith, just hearing how some of these young people are getting their hands on them. But it does, as we hear some of these really heartbreaking stories, and a lot of you all may remember that I also worked at the Baltimore Sun for some time, and they were having some of the same issues with young people in Baltimore. And going back to what a lot of folks have said, and to Keith's point, is that it starts in the household. And these parents have these guns around. These parents have no idea in some cases that their young people are listening to conversations about how they're getting access to these items. And then on top of it, there's so much pressure once you're involved in the life to add those notches. I mean, we hear it time and time again that there's clout when you
street
cred, right? If you have committed a crime. I think about that awful video a few weeks ago on Florida Avenue where you had those young boys running in the street saying, "Oh, you shot him. I didn't have any choice." And hearing them react to it and thinking, "Oh my gosh, they sound like babies."
Yeah.
They sound like babies. And
it was interesting. So go ahead. I'm sorry, Michelle. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, and so for me, I just wonder, we have all of these programs in terms of helping kids find other alternatives to get out of the street. But when you feel like you have no choice, as one of those young folks said, when you feel like you have to make these decisions, how are we fighting that? How are we getting to the root of that problem where going to the rec to play basketball is not even an option?
Yeah, because you wonder if people think it's safe. Go ahead, Keith.
Last week I was covering this case of a 16-year-old kid who was charged as an adult in a series of carjackings and robberies. When the police went to his home, the home that he shared with his mother and 4 siblings, they found 4 firearms, 2 of which had extended clips. He had these firearms in his home. Now, I don't know if his mother knew, don't know, but I can't imagine a 16-year-old child having things in a home that a parent doesn't know about, especially 4 firearms.
Yeah. And I think the big rhetorical question is for the Micha Greens, the Harold Fishers, the Keith Alexanders, are we naive to assume that there is that the subculture that a lot of these juveniles come from, the communities and the challenges that they face? I mean, do we get angry enough about this? Do we the solutions in our middle class communities maybe no, you don't. We didn't grow up like that. My daddy didn't allow that to happen. My mama didn't allow that to happen. But Keith, what did you just say? In the mother's home, if she didn't know, why wasn't she checking? There's a whole social debate about dealing with these issues in these communities that are facing these horrible challenges.
And let's also be honest. I wonder how many of these young people are actually financially
supporting the families. Yeah, and that is not new. That is not a new argument. Let me go back to the phone lines. 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Ed calling from DC. Thanks for calling, Ed. What's on your mind?
Yes, I wanted to comment about the uptake in the violence.
Go right ahead.
I believe it's already been said, but accountability is part of the problem. But, well, it's the main reason, but I believe it's on a larger scale. These politicians, the city council, these attorneys and judges, no one's taking accountability. A lot of these violent offenders are repeat offenders, and they're just let back onto the streets. They continue the foolishness and the violence that they've been doing for so long, and it just doesn't stop. And the D.C. police have their hands tied. Their force is at a minimal low, and, they've created these laws which really prohibit them from enforcing these violent acts to a certain extent. And, everyone's like, oh, let's get the National Guard. Well, who do you think has to go around with the National Guard? The National Guard doesn't have the arrest powers and, the knowledge to enforce the D.C. code that's, run by the district. So, again, you have to look back to accountability for the laws that are being made. And like you said,
Keith, thank you so much for your comments. Go right ahead, Keith, and then I need to go back to the phone lines.
Caller hit the nail right there. I talked to some of my sources on MPD, and what they said to me is that they have lost a lot of senior officers and detectives. They have retired. They've gone to federal positions, and by losing those senior officers, losing those senior detectives, that people don't know the city. They don't know who to target. They don't know who some of the repeat offenders are. The officers, just like the caller said, the seasoned officers who are patrolling the beat, who know the neighborhood, and the neighborhood knows them, they aren't staying around beyond 5-10 years for a variety of reasons. And that's also part of the problem. And the caller really did hit. I was surprised to hear that from my sources, but they said that is really one of the reasons that a lot of senior officers are leaving the department in droves out of frustration, out of the crime bill that happened in D.C., of defunding the police for a variety of reasons. But losing that seniority, losing the people who know the city and the city knows them is also contributing to what's happening in the city right now.
Sabrina, calling from D.C. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind? Sabrina, are you there?
Oh, yes. Hi. Yes, I'm here.
Go right ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on the part where they say hold the parents accountable for most of the things that's going on with our youth today. And I kind of disagree, because you have a lot of parents out here, they work 2 and 3 jobs, and they also kind of maintain their home by staying in their kids' ear, trying to get their kids, on the right track. But when the kids get out of the sight of the parents, they deal with a lot of pressure outside. They deal with peer pressure, the pressure from school, the pressure from others, you know what I'm saying? And so a lot of times the parents don't have no clue or idea what is going on with the kid. Like you spoke on before, like a kid, you find 4 weapons in there. I'm quite sure that a mom that's, have her household, and maybe she was one of those parents like me that searched the house, searched the kids, ask them questions, stay on them. Still, it doesn't matter how much you do. These kids are dealing with what is going on out here in society.
Okay, so Sabrina, let me ask you this. If, as you say, you cannot blame the parents, right, when the child commits a crime, a juvenile, okay, and we can't blame the parents, do we just lock them up when they're committing these crimes? Because then hold on, because then we get into that whole argument about the over-incarceration of young black men and teenagers, school to prison pipeline, all of that, and you have a lot of people who say all of that until the crime comes to their house.
Now, let me tell you, I'm one of those big supporters. Hey, if you're a juvenile and you committing senseless crimes and you're out there doing everything, then you have to pay the price.
Okay.
That's what I believe in. You know what I'm saying? I believe in that because I've raised my kids to be a certain type of way, but when they're dealing with all the things out here in society, they become another person. And I just feel like, you know, if you stay in your kids' ear and you continue to be on their backs about everything that they're doing and stuff like that, and I'm like an old parent. I'm not one of those new improved parents where they just let their kids just run wild and do all these things. I just don't see you holding a parent accountable for something that their kid is doing.
Okay.
And
all right. Well, Sabrina, thank you for your input. I appreciate it. 202-319-7810, 202-319-7810. Got to move on to another topic. This is actually a similar issue. It's the giant food store in Ward 8 deciding that they're no longer going to sell Thai. They're going to lock up some of their high-value, highly targeted items that have been, shoplifted. Micha, this makes me really sad.
Yeah.
This is a very, very... It makes me sad because we've seen, Trayon White a couple of weeks ago having a press conference saying, please stop stealing from this store because there was the risk that this store could close and the people that it serves will once again be in a food desert.
Yes, it is heartbreaking for a number of reasons. Let's start with the fact that this is the only full-service grocery store in Ward 8. The closest is about 2 miles away in Ward 7. And so if you're just talking about the desperate need for that location alone, you would think that or hope that the community then pours into keeping that place alive.
It's so important.
It's so incredibly important. On top of that, that giant in particular provides a lot of services and partnerships with organizations who are going into the community and offering free food, free produce, free meals, etc. for families. And so right here, what you have a case of really tragic issues on so and systemically tragic issues on so many different levels. Let me be clear. Groceries are far too expensive. Okay, we know that to be the case. People are struggling, and people gonna get theirs how they get theirs. And unfortunately, people are resorting to crime, stealing. Then you have, which is really interesting to me, is that the security is saying, well, we can't, we're watching people walk out with full grocery carts and not paying. And I'm like, well, are you doing your job here? And I know there's a level of danger involved in stopping people from committing another crime. But you have so many really systemic, challenging issues that need to be addressed here. But I really hope, and I think that this has been articulated by some of the leaders, including Councilmember White, Trayon White, I should make that clear because they're two, is that in order to keep that giant open, the community has to understand that they have to do the work. And that means, one, not stop stealing. Two, really hold one another accountable. Girl, I know you're not about to go out there and steal that giant laundry detergent because that's what y'all are working with now. Your clothes not going to smell like Tide anymore because people are going to be that affected. I mean, it's really going to get to that point. And so I'm hoping, having spent a lot of time in Ward 8, in Washingtonians in general, like to hold one another accountable. We do a really good job of that. And so I'm calling on the community. When your macaroni and cheese is not tasting the same because your craft is gone, when your clothes are not as clean because you can't get to that, and And when you're looking at the fact that your Giant, your one full service grocery store is in danger of closing, the only folks who can hold each other accountable is the community at this point. It's
Keith?
not the leaders.
And it's not just the people who are stealing.
Yeah.
It's the people who are purchasing these items off the street.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that Bobo is not selling Tide out of his car. You go to the Giant. So it's the same thing. If you're out there purchasing these items and you know these items have been mocked or stolen, you're doing you might as well be stealing it directly from the store. It's the same thing. Also, these officers, remember the security officer at the Giant in Rivertown, I believe it was, who was shot and killed. These officers are not going to lay their lives down over some Tide walking out the door.
Yeah.
And so after this officer who got killed maybe less than a year ago, I think that changed the dynamics on what these security officers are going to do when they see people shoplifting in these stores.
Yeah, and look, hats off to Giant for trying to do whatever can be done to keep this store in this community. I know this is not a wholly altruistic thing. This is a business.
Yes.
Let's be really, really clear. But when they talk about the millions of dollars that they've lost to shoplifters just over the past year and trying to find the balance between making a profit, serving the community, engaging in partnerships, while fighting the people who are stealing from them, that's a tough road to hoe. Very, very difficult.
But again, like you said, Harold, hats off to Giant because they don't have to keep doing this, right? They can say, you know what, we're closing up shop, we're out of there. But they're trying.
But let me ask you this, Keith. So what does that mean for that community if it becomes a food desert again? And I'm not talking about, okay, so they just have to go to Safeway. But, I mean, I think there's a bigger issue here. Again, another one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it. It's almost like the Giants' a social experiment.
Well, and I really want to be clear because it's already a food desert. I mean, I think that's the other problem is that this one store is getting robbed of millions because that's the one place that folks can go. And so, again, hats off to Giant for at least attempting to work with the leaders to keep this business open, to continue serving the community, to continue these partnerships. But I do think that this becomes another issue of folks are not going to want to open other full-service grocery stores in a location that really absolutely needs them. Folks are not going to want to open other even, quick stop or fast food restaurants because they'll be concerned about the same issue. So what it means for the community is that the development that, has in many ways come, but we can call it for what that was, is gentrification. But the development that's really absolutely necessary to sustain this community, won't happen because folks are afraid to open a business there.
Real quick.
Or if it,
hold on. I've got to get to this phone call, Keith. Eugene, calling from Maryland. Eugene, thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Just a channel.
Go right ahead. Real quick, Eugene.
Real quick, I'm not going to waste your time. I got a couple questions for you. Hopefully you can answer them. Number one, all these women complain about single mothers. Why are you ending up with men that are working in the first place? Number two, why aren't black men willing to stand up, take care of the children they make? Number three, why does the black community tolerate so many race traders that go around selling poison, robbing, raping, stealing from their own people?
Keith, I'm sorry, Eugene. Unfortunately, I don't think your connection is clear, so I'm not going to try to guess what you're saying. Give us a call back if you can. Let me move to this next topic. Your paper, Keith, Washington Post, reporting that the business section, not crime in courts.
Okay.
Reporting that bosses have kind of lost their patience with, working from home, remote working. They want workers to return to the job, return to the office, or lose their job. I mean, obviously, this is, private industry throwing this out there, but we also know this is the federal city. The mayor wants people to return to work. President Biden has even said things about federal workers returning to work. But Keith, I tell you, after talking to organizations like Blacks in Government, as well as my friends who work in human resources, it ain't going to happen. They're not coming back, Keith.
I have heard and I have seen bosses try this, and in other companies, and even with the threat, and it just fell apart. Because you've got productive employees who are saying, "I've got health issues, I've got this reason, I'm not going back in," and these companies are out of stand. So what can they do? You're not going to dismiss or fire someone who's been a loyal employee and who is still loyal and still dedicated and still productive just because he or she is doing work off campus and they're doing the same amount of work at home. This is going to be a very interesting litmus test to see how this works itself out, because I just don't see this being successful in the private sector. Government, definitely, but in the private sector, I don't see it being successful.
And look, during the pandemic, I worked from home. I did not like it, okay? I like being in studio. I don't have all of this stuff in my dining room. Micha, I don't want all of this stuff on my dining room table, okay? So let us be clear. I don't want microphones on my dining room table. I don't want keyboards scratching up my dining room table. But Micha, not everyone has a job where you must be in. A lot of people have gotten very comfortable with working from home.
Oh, absolutely. I have to say I did enjoy the beautiful transition that came with working from home. Now, of course, there was a lot of solitude in there, and knowing why we had to do it was incredibly depressing, particularly because of the amount of lives lost. But it's very interesting. If you remember, statistics showed initially that people were so much more productive working from home, and businesses were so incredibly pleased. And you had those huge corporations who were saying, remote working, we're going to implement remote working for permanently, or people will have a hybrid option and things like that. And now that it's affecting economies, we're seeing productivity's rates at least change all of a sudden. I can't accept that people have all of a sudden become lazier. In fact, I would imagine that folks have gotten better in remote working, particularly because of the remote learning for many folks, at least. But
remote learning is different from remote working.
Well, it is, but to have your child asking you 40 questions and losing connectivity, et cetera, while you're attempting to work from home, can be, I'm sure, problematic for folks, or at least reduce productivity. But in this case, that's not even a factor anymore. I think it'll be very hard, per Keith's point, to force folks working in the private sector to go back to work. I understand why it's a thing, why these bosses are wanting it. And in many ways, I mean, full transparency, the Washington Informer, I love going to our newsroom, but most days I work from home, particularly because, and I don't have to tell you guys this, but a lot of our work involves not really even being in an office. And so, going from home and going from place to place is a lot easier for me. But when you're talking about then introducing a new culture of employees, which we see is coming in droves with Gen Z, we're going to have at least a little bit of comfort with collaborating in offices again, even if most of the week we can work from home. And so I'm hoping that at least bosses will get a little bit of what they want, simply because these new graduates are going to have to be trained in office.
I want to move.
And all this is coming as the COVID numbers are now starting to go back.
Right,
right.
exactly.
There's that
let's
too.
Let's not forget about that.
Yes.
I want to move on to the next two stories. Of course, Deion Sanders and the Colorado University Buffaloes beating Texas Christian University in the first game last week. No one from who did not believe in Deion Sanders, the HBCU legacy, or his son Shedeur Sanders believed that they could do it. I did. Mm-hmm. And this is what Deion said in the press conference. It's long, but it's worth listening to.
We're gonna continuously be questioned because we do things that have never been done. That's the way our life has presented ourselves. We do things that have never been done, and that makes people uncomfortable. When you see a confident black man sitting up here talking his talk, walking his walk, coaching 75% African Americans in the locker room, that's kind of threatening. Oh, they don't like that. But guess what? We're going to consistently do what we do because I'm here and ain't going nowhere. And I'm about to get comfortable in a minute. Because guess what? These young men in there right now, they believe. Not all of them believed before. But right now, they came up one by one, twos by twos. Coach, we believe. Now they believe. Now Boulder believes. People in the front office, people in the building, the fans, the students. Now everybody want to believe.
Drop the mic, Keith.
Coach Prime.
Absolutely.
Coach Prime.
Did you see the game?
Yes. And it was. How could you miss the game, right?
Keith said yes. Yes.
Everybody was watching it. And then if you weren't watching it, it was all over social media. Everybody tell you to watch it. It was awesome. This team was 1-11 last season.
Yeah, how about that?
It was one game the entire season. And come out and hit their first game and 12th, third ranked team and beat them. And that's Coach Prime's arrogance, but it's also his skill. Now, yeah, it was mostly offense. They got to work on that defense. Defense was struggling, but that's an offensive team. And once he gets that defense together, they will really be killing it.
Yeah. Real quick, Micha.
You know, I just have to say one of my favorite parts about all of this is the empowerment that he is instilling in these young players. You know, Keith said, and we know that Deion Sanders has the Coach Prime arrogance all the way. But it was so great to hear him tell these young boys, you know, get comfortable with people talking about you like this. Get comfortable with saying how good of a player you are and writing about you. Because, it brings me so much joy, not only because they're underdogs, but because somebody believes in them.
Yeah.
And particularly as we see this unfortunate uptick in violence here in the district, we know how important it is to have somebody who believes in you.
Real quick.
That's true also, these young black players. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where he hit the nail on. He's like, they just think that you're just, a player, but you're more than that. And he's showing them you can have the swag and the arrogance, but back it up and talk that talk and walk that walk. And that's what he's doing.
Real quick, Keith, you can now register to go back to swimming in the Anacostia. Are you going to do that?
I'm right behind you, brother.
You're right behind me. I'm right behind Micha, are you swimming in the Anacostia?
You know, I just haven't proven if Anacostia water is good for my hair and skin.
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, I'm not doing it. I like to swim. Misha, I know you like hot sand on your feet, but this is not it. Look, Micha Green, Keith Alexander, thank you for talking to us. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This has been fun.
And finally, tonight, some thoughts about this week's top stories. They are just some of the important stories of the week. Now, this doesn't lessen the importance of other stories that we did not talk about. Almost all of the stories are serious. Others give us a chance to lighten up just a bit, but they are stories you're talking about at your kitchen table and amongst your peers, giving you a chance to think about them and in some cases giving you an opportunity to do something about them. That's the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, September 6th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.